The Newcastle Knights, we are here back with Scoop to go through their squad. They have a terrific draw to kick it off. Firstly, Scoop, how do you feel getting your head kicked in?
Oh, mate, you've got to get ahead. You've got to get your head in the game sometimes, and you just got to go through the pain.
For anyone, I hope you've seen the announcement, the little hype video I put out. If you got all the way to the end, poor Scoop got his head kicked in and it's in somewhere in the sky. So let's get cranking in this Knights squad here. So this first 6 rounds looks absolutely incredible. They've got the Warriors, Tigers, Dolphins, Raiders, Seagulls, and Warriors before a couple of tough games and then a bye in round 10. Scoop, can we find some good players to pick in our round 1 team?
Oh, 100%. Even though the Knights aren't necessarily a top 8 team yet, there's going to be, I think, some definite improvement with Hastings organising them instead of some lackluster halves recently, and I think they can really take advantage of some of these soft games. Potentially 3 or 4 of those are bottom 4 teams, and maybe all 6 don't make the top 8, so really, really high upside for some outside backs.
Yeah, very exciting. They're obviously having Warriors twice in the first 6. Sorry to all Warriors fans, but let's hope you definitely have an improvement here to the start this season. But we kick it off with Bradman Best, and he's someone that unfortunately has had a lot of injuries in the past few years. So much talent, but are we avoiding him, Scoop?
There's maybe a little bit of interest, but I think I'd prefer other people in that back line, to be honest. There was a bit of a narrative that the last time the Knights had a good season and they had a good half with Mitchell Pearce, that was the year that he sort of debuted and was averaging those really good scores before he came back to the pack a little bit. So maybe he goes up a little bit, but at 500k, I think there's other safer centre guns you can go for.
Yeah, like most outside backs, right? If the team's going well, then they're a chance of going on different runs throughout the season for sure. Jaden Brayley comes in at a pretty cheeky price of $6.95. If you look back to his scores at the beginning of 2021, he was an out and out keeper gun in that hook position. So $6.95, 48.6, a very short year after his ACL injury. What are our thoughts on him?
Yeah, he's one that's a little bit hard to reject because he did have that really good year. He absolutely started on fire in 2021, and you had to have him or you were left behind. He came back after a long spell off the back end of last year, but did have a lot of try assist and attacking stats in that sample. So I think he does have a couple points of upside, maybe especially with this early draw, but I don't know if he's really a long-term keeper. Maybe he's an interesting one to hold through to round 13 Origin and then sell and upgrade to someone after that.
Yeah, I can agree with that. He just seemed like, he had that awesome start to the year, and then he really fell away. So we haven't seen him do it consistently for a long time. And we're looking for him, if you're going to pick him up, you want him to score about 55 points plus. So is he able to do that? Potentially, but for how long? Adam Clune is in there at 428. He's obviously a solid player, but at this point, priced at 30. Looks like he won't start this year. We're just going to fade him for now and just learn about him, I suppose.
Yeah, I think he's probably too far down the pecking order. He had 1 or 2 good games at the beginning of last year, but I don't think he'll feature much at all with Hastings and Ponga, the preferred halves at the moment.
Yeah, and we have Matt Croker, who actually came out and had a bunch of early good games last year. Do we see minutes for him this year?
It'll be interesting because there's a couple of spots on the bench that could potentially get a few minutes with both Barnett and Clemmer leaving. They get Adam Elliott, who replaces some of that, but unless that's absorbed through guys like Daniel and Jacob Saifiti especially, they might be 1 or 2 spots on the bench that get 30 or 35 minutes, and he's one of them. At this stage, he's well down the list of people I'd want to pick up, but he's definitely one to just keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, so if we're looking at just front row minutes, you said the Saifiti boys, then there'd be Matty Croker, there would be Leo Thompson. Do we have really anyone else of note there to talk of in terms of those middle forwards? You got Jack Hetherington, which we don't know where he's going to play at the moment. And then you got some edges like Fitzgibbon and Brodie Jones who are fighting for minutes. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see that makeup for sure. What are you thinking there?
I think some of us were expecting Hetherington to get a couple of minutes on the edge, but I'm starting to think that he is going to move into that bench middle role like he often has. So he might be the one to pick up a lot of those minutes, but there still might be a couple to go around, whether that goes to Thompson or Croker or someone like that.
Okay, so yeah, if we're looking at maybe one of those few guys getting a 40-minute role, there's probably some upside there with Croker's price point at 23.6. You got Leo Thompson's at 26 there. If they can get a PPM anywhere around that 0.8 and a half, 0.9 or something, there's probably a little bit of value. But let's find out through the trials and learn a bit more from there. We got Phoenix Crossland next at 322, a little bit above base at the moment. We've seen him score decently at certain times when he gets a role. Do you agree, Lockie? We're just going to have to wait until there's some injuries for him?
Yeah, well, he's, as it stands, probably the backup to the utility. So that's not really a position you want to rush out and buy. But, I mean, if there are injuries and he gets a spot for a month or 6 weeks, he could be definitely one to bring in if the Knights are going okay.
Amazing. Adam Elliott is on our radar now. Mr. Lockie, what are your thoughts on Adam?
Yeah, Adam Elliott is an interesting one. There are 3 players, Jaden Brayley, Adam Elliott, and Kurt Mann, who will have a bit of an impact on each other this year. Adam Elliott played 55, 60 sort of minutes at the lock for the Raiders, averaged some really good scores in the middle and towards the back end of last year. If he can get those sort of minutes, I think he can definitely push 50, even low 50s, like 52, 53, have that 10 points and be a borderline keeper. I think he's a really good option, but I do want to know what happens with Kurt Mann. How many minutes does Mann play? And does Elliott play, say, 40 at lock and then move into the front row a little bit? Or I just want to know what that rotation looks like. Does Mann take a couple minutes off Brayley? But as it stands, Elliott is definitely up the top bracket of those mid-ranges we're looking at.
Yeah, he's definitely of interest of mine. Yeah, the minutes is the only real worry for him, that unknown role. But if he can get anywhere close to 50 points there, which, you know, if he gets that 55 to 60 minutes, he's clearly going to be able to get that. And at worst, you hold him all the way to the bye in round 10. He's not a keeper, and you can move him on. So definitely a decent option. He's in my team currently. And check the mid gun section where I spoke about him in a little bit more detail. Lockie Fitzgibbon, again, speaking about him as potentially playing on an edge, with a few guys vying for that spot with Jones and stuff, he probably doesn't even get the 80 minutes, and he's never been a keeper. What are your thoughts on him? Underpriced trap.
No, well, he's in and out of the team, so he might score 1 or 2 points better and make you 20k and then disappear for 6 weeks. He's just not a really great option.
Yeah. Tyson Frizzell, he's someone that is a little bit more of an option for most of us. At 47.1 is his average. He's averaged a lot better than that in previous years. Do we see him as having a potential spot in your side?
I had him for a while. He's not on my team at the moment, but he definitely has upside. If you look at his past years, he is one of the most consistent keeper back rowers in the game, averaged north of 50 in I think all of his last 4 or 5 or 6 seasons. The problem was last year he did have some rib and concussion affected games towards the back end of the year, and we know ribs aren't great to come back from for the next month, 2 months for fantasy. So if he can stay fit, I think he can push towards those low to mid 50s again. It's just a question of his age and will he pick up a niggle or two, because he did average, without those injury affected games, 53 last year, which is immediately 6 points of value and a keeper. So he's definitely one to watch. But in a year where there are so many really good value edges, you've got to ask yourself, is Frizzell actually worth it with a little bit of risk or not? He's a very good pod, but do you go for someone else or not?
Let me know you love a pod, Lockie. I definitely see him as a solid option for sure. Dane Gagai at 560k, average of 39.2. He's been someone that's been really solid in that centre position for a long time. We still haven't heard any news on Lockie Miller. So he was training Gagai at fullback, which we've looked at his scores and not too much different between centre and fullback, his scores there. Do you have any interest in him as a pod as well in the centres?
I do, actually. I've warmed to him the last couple of weeks. I did a bit of digging and found out that when he plays at centre in games that he scores a try, he averages 57 or 58. That's really good. We know he did that for a couple of years at Souths, and previously he's been close to a centre gun for the last couple of years. Just the worry around him at the moment is probably his age and uncertainty around the role. But the big upsides are that incredibly soft draw in which he could score some tries. And Hastings now on the right. Hastings, as we know, was an absolute ball magnet at the Tigers. He was getting hooker levels of receipts, and guys like Nofaluma on the right side were benefiting. So I think Gagai is a good shout if you want to spend a little bit more in the centre position. But you'd really want to bank on him scoring that 50-plus average over those first 6 weeks, which is possible, but he's got to score. He's got to score a few tries for sure.
Yeah, and if you look at a similar price point in a better team, you could probably get Val Holmes, for example. So, yes, very interesting with Gags there. Tyson Gamble, we're looking at him as potentially someone that is looking for an injury there. You've got him down as a trials watch. Probably won't start.
Yeah, well, I think Gamble's one of the three that they were rotating, training at fullback. Gagai, Gamble, and Bailey Hodgson, I think. But, yeah, at this stage, I don't think Gamble will get a spot.
Yeah. Jackson Hastings is someone that I have a lot of interest in myself. He's currently sitting in my team. He's at a very cheeky price there of $6.45, averaged 45 last year in multiple different roles and carried a very weird and wonderful injury there, which is something I'm not very interested in picking up myself. He dropped a lot of his kick meters, and that's dropped his average a lot. And Hastings, what do you want to say about him?
If his foot is healed, I reckon he's a very, very good player to bring into your side. He averaged 45 for the year, but in those games that he was at halfback with his uninjured foot, he was kicking goals. He was getting 350-ish kick meters a game, and he averaged 59 points over that 5 or 6 weeks. Then, once he did get that nerve damage in his foot, he lost the goals, and his kick meters only went to probably about 150 to 200, massive drop in base, and his price just fell through the floor. So if we can see in trials that he is kicking well and his foot has come good, definitely a great one to pick up. But it is a nerve injury, so it's hard to know what the comeback process from that is, or whether that's just going to stay around, or whether it's going to be numb or it's healed. So definitely one to watch in the trials, but if he's good, really good buy.
And like goal kickers for them, is it just him and then Ponga, would you say?
Yeah, it's between him and Ponga. I did see someone say that, I think it was one of the reporters saying that Ponga's probably in front as long as he's fit, but with that hamstring injury in preseason, I'd probably say Hastings at least kicks for a while.
Yeah, okay. And who knows how long Ponga's going to be in and out of the team for as well. So, yeah, just an added benefit if he does get that kicking right. Okay, Hetherington at 362. A few people have mentioned him. If he gets the start, do we pick him up?
He's very close between a decent cash cow and a trap. It's really hard to know because it's Jack Hetherington. He's had really poor scoring in the middle before, but on the edge, he's not so bad. The thing is, will he get the 80? Will he split that a bit with someone like Brodie Jones? Does he have the motor for 80? And also, will he get suspended? So I think there's probably one too many things in the negative for me to pick up Hetherington, even if he is named at the edge. But he is an option in that tricky price bracket where there's not a lot of cheapish middles.
Yeah, maybe for me under 300 he might be an option, but not right now. Bailey Hodgson at 230, so basement price for him. If he gets an opportunity at fullback, will he be in your team?
If Miller doesn't sign and he's there 100%, I think the only reason why he isn't pretty much locked into training at that fullback position on his own is because he has had a fair few injuries in the last 2 years, hurting his development a little bit. But I think if they don't end up signing Miller, somehow it's dragged on so long. I really want to get some news on that, hey. Yeah. But if it ends up that Miller doesn't go there, Hodgson does play fullback. I'd say he's pretty close to a must-have with that Knights start.
Yeah, and we've got Hymel Hunt in there. Probably not going to get a spot this year, but if he does happen to get a spot through injury, we've got Dom Young. There's plenty of good wingers in that side. Do we think about him at all?
Oh, well, he is base price. That is definite tick in his favour. I think he had a couple of interchange games or injury games Oh no, hang on. 17 from one game. So yeah, 250k. Only really interested if he's playing for a month. And with them signing Marzu, that's just another mouth to feed and probably another one that pushes ahead of him in the pecking order.
Yeah, that's fair. We got Jack Johns there. Probably not someone that's going to feature too much. He'll probably come up at some point. He played 3 games last year. But even in some okay minutes, wasn't scoring too great, so we'll leave him for another time. Brodie Jones comes in at 457k, average of 32 total last year. He scored really well when he did get big minutes, so that's what we're looking for at the moment. What are your thoughts on him, Lockie?
Yeah, I was really hot on him initially, but I haven't really heard much mail that he's going to be in that position.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing I've really heard is that Hetherington might not get that, so maybe Jones will. But he is a pretty good scorer. If he does get close to 80, even if he gets like 60 minutes, 65 minutes, I think that's well enough to put him in the cash cow bracket. It's just a question of, is he better than one of the guys that are already there around the price, like a Garner, a Hopgood, and those type of players?
Yeah.
Do you have the space to put in 4 or 5 of those? I don't think you do. You've got to pick the best ones, I'd say.
Yeah, 3 or 4 seems like the way to go. Dylan Lucas is a young centre there, and he looks like he's probably behind a few guys. Do you know much on him?
I don't think so. Probably falls down the pecking order a little bit because Marzu's on the wing now. I'd say Tuala and Heimel Hunt are a little bit more likely to play centre if there are injuries. So Dylan Lucas is a bit more competition. I don't think we'll probably see him this year, to be honest, but he could be one to watch in upcoming years if he goes well.
Yeah, and Kurt Mann probably going to lose his lock/14 bigger role that he had last year with Adam Elliott coming over. And he sticks there at a 570 price, 40 average. We're just going to avoid him unless there's injuries.
Yeah, I probably have him as the person to lose the most cash out of the whole comp.
Wow.
Over the first 6 weeks or original. So he's just not playing that role in the starting side anymore on a bench utility for 25, 30, 40 minutes. He's just not going to do much.
Yeah, maybe a 28 average or something. So that'd be a good 150k or so drop. So we move along to Mapapalangi. We saw him for a couple of games last year and actually did really well, averaged 40 across those 2. He's obviously priced really low at 22.3, which is great. Super cheap there. What are our thoughts on him?
I have heard more and more good things about him as the preseason has gone on. I've even heard that even if they do sign Miller, Mapapalangi's a chance to play, and they might even move Best to wing or something like that.
Wow.
But
So
until he's there, he's not really an option. But we know from his scoring ability that we saw in a limited sample last year and the early draw, if he is there to start the year, very close to a must-have, I'd say, because he'll be centre and half, I think, and fix up that very difficult centre position at the moment.
Yeah, how tough's that? Greg Marzu at 532. He gets priced down just a little bit to 37.2. He's obviously a big barnstorming type of player there, and moves over from the Titans to the Knights. Do we see any value with him at this stage?
I was initially a bit excited about him, but he'll need a lot of tries to score well. He tackle breaks against anybody. He doesn't care whether it's the Panthers or the Roosters. He does have a lot of handling errors in him, though. So I think he'll probably end up in the low 40s averages, which isn't quite enough to take him.
Yeah, I agree with that. Kalen Ponga comes up next at 532. He has priced up just a tiny bit at 37.2. Most likely, if named in 6, we'll get the wing fullback and the half dual, which is obviously pretty cool. But are we scared of him?
Well, before the hamstring injury, we were a little bit scared of him, especially because of his injury proneness. And now we're quite a bit scared of him, to be honest. So the thing is that it's only a 6-week injury, so there's a good chance he'll still line up for the last trial or round 1. But will he be explosive and in a new position next to really a ball magnet in Hastings? I think he'll be able to get some more attacking stats, but he will definitely lose some run meters, I would say. And it's very hard to project Kalen Ponga because he played there before, but that was plenty of years ago when he was young. At this stage, he is risky, but because of that early draw, he's still an option. If he wasn't, I'd have him as a bit of a trap. I think if he's named there round one, I think he's definitely an option, but with the risks, I really wouldn't be able to commit to you either way, whether he's actually a good or bad buy.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting one, and obviously people know him for how amazing he plays in Origin if you're a bit of a casual fan. But lately, last few years especially, he hasn't done so well for the Knights, which a lot of Knights fans are really annoyed with. So you see him at that really cheap price and you might go, oh my God, he's an absolute steal. But just be aware that with everything going on, he doesn't actually play as well. He has the injury, concussion risk. So just be aware of him. But he definitely could come out and average a 50. He could come out and hit you a 9 first game. We don't actually have any idea. Daniel Saifidi is a massive one we need to talk about as well. At 545, he's a very interesting mid-range middle. And we've seen plenty of years there where he's done really well. What are your thoughts on him, Locke?
Yeah, he is definitely an option. I think he's a little bit more risky than the guys 50k more expensive than him, like Aaron Clark, Adam Elliott, TPJ, if they get their desired roles. Daniel Saifidi is a narrative buy because in the past he's played very similar minutes and had a PPM close to 1. Last year he had not a full preseason. He had a couple of injury issues during the year, still played pretty much the whole year with normal minutes, but had only like a 0.7 PPM instead of like a 0.9. With some of the forwards leaving, I think he has to step up a little bit. Him and Elliott will be carrying their forward pack, and there's definite upside for him to push up to 45 plus.
Yeah, he's a very interesting one. The talking league narrative that we love to hear on a regular basis. I definitely have some interest in him. He's not currently in my team, but he's on the fringe. And yeah, some upside there for a guy that's going to play all the way to round 10. Won't be a keeper. You could probably move him on then. Jacob Saifidi, the brother there, he's only 41k cheaper and average a few points less than Daniel, but has never had an awesome season. Is there any thoughts on him?
Yeah, you would think he would step up more because he's usually plays the less minutes, but when he has had the big minutes, he hasn't really shined. He's kind of struggled a little bit for the role and points, so Daniel Saifidi is probably the better two of the brothers to look at.
Yeah. Sasangi, he comes in as a potential centre and wing. Again, he's behind a few guys, you'd say. Think about him if he pops up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you want to see how you want to see how a bunch of the how the Knights play anyway, as well as if you're thinking about picking up any of these outside backs. Leo Thompson next. Thoughts on him? We spoke about him a little bit earlier, looking to get sort of 40 minutes maybe. Find out in trials.
Yeah, I think he needs probably at least 35 to 40 minutes to be looked at. He's a good PPM scorer, priced at about 26. I think he's probably, as it stands, a likely 5 points, but a very unlikely 10 points. We'll just have to see how it shapes up.
Yeah, because he wasn't so bad, and he was an early season cash cow last year that made everyone a bit of cash there. We'll leave Chuala just being a bit of an awkward price at 426, but has some okay games here and there. Dominic Young is actually an interesting one at 474. He's one of those mid-range wing fullbacks that has a lot of talent. We saw in the World Cup how well he played. But he comes in with that awkward price point there. Do we see any interest in him?
Probably a slight bit, especially with Hastings on the right. When Hastings and Nofaluma played together, when Hastings was at the halfback, 7 tries in 7 games. Wow. Dominic Young is arguably as good as Nofaluma now, as Nofaluma is in the 12 of his career, and he's very quick. He's definitely going to be used as a weapon after that really good World Cup. So there is definitely a bit of upside. It's just whether he is a winger, and it is rare for a winger to be a keeper, and to be 10 points value, he'd need to push up to low 40s, almost mid 40s. So he's a tough one. He's in probably a little bit too expensive to really be thinking about, but you'll be sorry if he does go off in that first 6 weeks.
Oh, we saw him and Edric Lee have really good months or so at certain points, scoring lots of tries. Anytime the Knights did score, it was just on those wings. So even if they didn't score a lot of points, it was those guys. I remember there was a game there, I think Edric might have scored 4 or 5 and Dom scored 3 or something like that. Crazy. Yeah, but that's the Knights. We will be going through the Panthers next. What are our thoughts on where we think the Knights will sit come finals time? Will they make them?
I don't think they make it. A lot of people got them pegged for the bottom four, but if they can finally get some clarity on who's going to play what position to start the season, I think they can avoid the bottom four just. I have them probably about 12th, 13th at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's too many great teams in that top 8. I even have teams like the Raiders who probably improved this year and had a really good finish. They're probably sitting around like a 7th or 8th, to be honest with you. So, yeah, very interesting. That's the Knights, guys. We'll move on to the Panthers next.